Hi there, today I want to walk you through my Adobe Illustrator to Photoshop workflow that I use to create illustrations just like this one. But before we get started, hi there, my name's Natasha Polizenko, otherwise known as @Natashka on all the platforms, and I am a New York City-based illustrator and consultant, and I am on a mission to teach and uplift people in their illustration practices. If you like this video, please be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Okay, so now the first thing you want to do is have a sketch to work from, and you can create this in any way you like. I love using the Procreate app on my iPad to sketch out my drawings, but you can also use paper and pen and then scan or photograph it in, whatever works best for you. It doesn't really matter at this stage. Okay, so let's dive into the actual Illustrator to Photoshop workflow. So what we want to do is open up our image in Adobe Illustrator. For the artboard size, I will typically work at about 1080 by 1350 pixels, but feel free to use whatever size works for your art. Now, go ahead and name your sketch layer just to keep things neat and ordered. I'm also quickly going to create a background for my artwork just by using the rectangle shape tool. And I want to make sure that I put this on its own layer and name it background. And I'm going to go ahead and change the color. In fact, I'm going to use a gradient, but you feel free to use whatever color you like. And just to make sure nothing moves around or gets selected by accident, I'm going to lock that background layer. Now, I'm going to go back up to my sketch layer and turn the blending mode to multiply. This allows us to see through the whites in the sketch image, and I'm also going to turn down the opacity to make it a little easier to see the shape layers that I'm going to create shortly. Okay, so now I'm also going to lock this layer so I don't move it by accident. And now I want to create a new layer in between my sketch and background layers that I've already created. And it's on this layer here that I want to start building out all of my shapes. So using the pen tool, I'm just going to start creating all of my shapes, making sure that I'm tracing my original sketch as closely as possible. Now, even though I'm drawing all these shapes on the same layer, I do want to make sure that I'm drawing them in the correct order. So for example, if I make this a darker color, I can see that this should be behind the head layer. So to reorder these, with the head selected, I go up to Object, select Arrange, and then select Bring to Front. And now you can see that these are now ordered correctly. Now, you just want to go ahead and create all of the rest of your shapes in your composition. You will see that I like to change up the color of my shapes just so I can see if I have them in the right order. And you will see that as I'm going through this process, I'm going in and bringing items to the front or back. Okay, once you're done with your shapes, you'll want to get everything back to the right color. So far here, I have done the skin of both the woman and the animal, but you'll also want to go ahead and add all your details. And again, make sure that you're taking care to order your layers properly. Okay, so once you're done with all your base layers, now it's time to create that bridge from Illustrator to Photoshop so we can add that texture and dimension. So what you want to do is go over to your Layers panel and click the little circle next to the layer that contains your artwork. This will select all of your layers for you. What you want to do now is to navigate to and click these three little lines on the upper right corner of your Layers panel and go down to Release Layers Sequence. What this does is puts every single layer you drew on its own layer, which is what we want when we move into Photoshop. But there is another step. Right now, the layers are still all nested under this original layer. What we want to do is select all of our layers and move it out of that section. Now these will show up as individual layers in Photoshop. Alright, so now go up to File, Export, and select Export As. Find a place to save your file, name it, and you want to select Use Artboards. And then in the Format dropdown, select the Photoshop option. Okay, so now you have a Photoshop document ready to go. Now go to wherever you saved that out and open it up in Photoshop. All your layers should appear in order in your layers panel. If for some reason your layers aren't showing up properly, go back to Illustrator and make sure you follow the instructions about releasing your layers to sequence. Alright, so once you have your file open and ready in Photoshop, it's time to go in with the shading and texture. Now, you can do this any way you like. I always use this grainy textured effect that I really love. I have another YouTube video in which I go through the step-by-step process of how I create my grainy shading. I will link it for you to check out, but basically what I do is I select the layer I want to work on, I create a new layer right above it, and apply it to the layer below by hovering over this line that divides my layers and holding down the Option key and clicking. This means that everything I create on this layer will be bound to the layer below. And that's basically the gist of it. I will go through painstakingly and add my texture to each of the layers. Again, if you need a better description of how I do this, go to my other YouTube video on grainy textures. Once you're done, all that's left to do is export your work. All you need to do is go up to File, Export, and select Export As. Here you can select your format size and just hit Export. So that's about it. I really hope this tutorial helped you and that you were able to follow along and create your own illustration. And remember, this is a very specific workflow that I use, but there are hundreds of different ways that you can create illustrations. So it's worth mentioning, do what feels good for you. And as always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to drop them in the comments. And if you have any requests or suggestions for future tutorials or topics that you would like me to cover, please let me know. Okay, so until next time, bye for now.